Okay, so welcome everybody. It's a smaller group today, so I'll give you the heads up. It's going to be a more technical presentation today, so bear with me. Lots and lots of details. It's being recorded, so if you want to go back and go over some of these details, you might want to do that. So we're looking at the presentation today on nutrients to help protect you against developing depression and anxiety. It's a timely topic, I thought, because it's COVID, second round. People are really feeling a difference in the second round here, especially right now. It's February, which is known as like the blues month, right? February blues. So I just wanted to go over some nutrients that you can help give yourself, protect yourself against developing it, or just addressing it if you feel like you're dealing with some anxiety and depression right now with everything that's going on in the world and the time of year. So if we move on here to the next slide, little medical disclaimer, just with everything I do, I like to say that the information being shared here is for your consideration. It may be subject to change based on your own individual needs, disability, diet, and medication intake. So any of the supplements, any of the nutrients I'm talking about today, please, please, please always consult with your physician or other healthcare provider before introducing any new supplements into your diet. So there's no risk of contraindications because some medications do have interactions with some supplements, and including some that I'm going to mention today. Okay, so if we actually move on to the next slide now. Okay, so depression and anxiety with the disabled community. This is a very big issue, and studies do show that people with disabilities compared to their able-bodied counterparts do have higher rates of depression and anxiety. And one stat that I found here, the rate of depression in adults with disabilities is anywhere from 24.9 to 41% higher than able-bodied counterparts. So that's really, really high. So that's why you really need to look at this. If not now, over a lifetime, people do tend to experience depression and or anxiety. So if we go to the next slide, we can move forward. So what does food have to do with it? It actually has a lot to do with it. We all know that everything we eat affects how we feel, our body health, but it also does affect our brain health. Usually we think it optimizes our physical health and it supports our brain function, which I've talked about before, but it does have a huge influence on our mood and conditions like depression and anxiety, but it's often not considered. And so what the information I give today, you'll see why it really should be considered. And research does demonstrate that poor diet quality is linked to poor mental health. People who eat more unhealthy foods are more likely to report psychological distress, such as anxiety, compared to people who ate healthier diets. And just for an example, to get more specific, eating fried foods, so fast foods, or other foods that contain a lot of processed sugars, refined sugars, is actually linked to higher rates of depression. So there's some really hardcore facts there. Studies have proven that link there. And if we go to the next slide, please. The unfortunate thing is that the diets of people with disabilities tend to, I'm not going to make a blanket coverage statement here, but they tend to include more unhealthy foods for a variety of reasons here. And you can see these reasons listed here. It's because there are financial constraints. Sometimes when people have had an injury, for example, there is a change in economic status, so it changes the foods you eat. It could also be due to stress. When you're feeling stressed, you might not just have the energy to go out, buy healthy foods, organize, meal prep, meal plan. There could also be access limitations, just going out and getting healthy foods if you have a disability. Maybe it's difficult to get to the grocery store. You might have some sleeping difficulties, again, which causes fatigue, which prevents you from wanting to go out and grocery shop. There could also be emotional eating disorders, which is often linked to people with disabilities, and that could include eating too much or not eating enough, which if you're eating the wrong foods or not eating enough foods will affect your nutrient status. Fatigue, I've mentioned a couple times right now. It's a huge issue for people with disabilities, and it really affects everything you do, including your meal preparation. There's also the effect of reduced physical ability, dexterity. Maybe you don't have good hand dexterity to prepare healthy foods. So all of these reasons here really affect our diets. And if we can go to the next slide here, please. Just to give you an example, the typical diets of people with disabilities tend to include a lot of refined carbohydrates. And when I say refined carbohydrates, what I mean by that are things like white bread, white pasta, white rice, packaged prepared foods, a lot of sugar-laden cereals, a lot of takeout order-in foods like burgers, fries, pizzas, a lot of sugar in things like pop. A lot of people don't realize how much sugar they drink, but also cakes and cookies, candies, things like that. There's also a huge consumption of trans fats, artificial flavors, artificial colors, again, from fast processed foods. And the reason that there's such a consumption of these kind of foods is because they tend to be fast, easy, convenient, right? It especially goes back to fatigue. You don't want to go out and prep all this healthy food we're going to talk about. So getting a lot of these sugar-laden foods with trans fats, these artificial ingredients, is fast and easy, but they lack nutrients and they lack fiber. And as you'll see, this is what can contribute to mood disorders, okay? So if we can go to the next slide, please. So we're going to talk about here inflammation. I've given you a little background about our diets and why we're at risk of experiencing more anxiety, more depression, but I want to discuss in detail the connection between inflammation and mood. And just to make sure there's no confusion, when I'm talking about inflammation, I'm talking about microscopic inflammation in your tissues. That's what I mean, okay? So there's no confusion over that. Thank you. So on this slide here, in order for me to explain the relationship between diet and inflammation, I need to talk about the interconnection between these three systems in the body. And that is the nervous system, the hormone system, and the immune system, and how these affect inflammation and subsequently mood. The nervous, hormone, and immune systems all communicate and interact with each other every day, every second. And as such, if there is dysfunction in one system, for example, dysfunction in the immune system, which is seen in chronic inflammation, which people with disabilities tend to have, then it has the capacity, because it's communicating with the other systems, to negatively influence the nervous system. And then this, in turn, can translate into neurological and behavioral disorders, such as depression. And depression has been linked to a state of chronic inflammation. So it's a huge chain reaction there, but I need to kind of explain this so it will all make sense in the end there. If we can please go to the next slide. There you see the interconnection going on there. Okay, so the next slide is, we know that people with disabilities tend to live with systemic inflammation. So again, it's that microscopic inflammation in our tissues, in our brains, in our guts, everywhere in our body. And evidence shows that inflammatory pathways may contribute to the development of depression. And there's a research study right there that's listed. And if we can go to the next slide, please. People with disabilities are susceptible to this chronic systemic inflammation that I just talked about due to a number of factors, such as stress. We know through studies that people with disabilities live with more stress, and it's our lifestyle, going out and dealing with constant inaccessibility in our communities, for an example. That stress raises your cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone. Cortisol causes inflammation in the body. Also, people with disabilities tend to be more overweight. And when you are overweight, your fat cells again produce inflammatory molecules in your body, which contribute to systemic inflammation. Also, we tend to lead more sedentary lifestyle because of things like winter. We can't get out and exercise as much as we used to. That also contributes to systemic inflammation. Smoking, higher risk of smoking in the disabled population. Trauma in and of itself, if you've had any kind of trauma, injury, that increases your inflammation. But what we're talking about today is poor diet. Poor diet also is linked to a state of chronic inflammation. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, please. How does diet relate to inflammation? It has to do with things called cytokines. So cytokines are chemical messengers in our body, and they're secreted by cells, and they have a fundamental role in the immune system, which I was talking about earlier, right? And they help regulate inflammation, which is needed if we get sick, we're fighting an infection, or if we have an injury. We need inflammation to help us heal, help us recover, help us repair. So it's a good thing. And we all know we've sustained injuries, we hurt ourselves, whether it's a cut, broken bone, or a ripped tendon. We know that that inflammation happens in the area of injury, and that the reason for that is for the body to take more fluids to that area, more oxygen, more nutrients to heal it. So inflammation in that situation is a good thing. The problem is when you have chronic inflammation, it ends up resulting in tissue destruction and increased risk of disease. And that's what we're talking about here today. And the interesting thing about cytokines is they're heavily influenced by our diet. So consuming certain foods and avoiding others can really influence our cytokine levels, those chemical messengers, and our inflammation in our body. And the typical diet of people with disabilities that I just talked about contributes to increased cytokine levels. Okay, so I hope all this makes sense. I know it's kind of complicated. Let's move on to the next slide here. So in order for me now to explain more clearly the role of inflammation in the diet on depression specifically, I need to back up a wee bit and explain the basics of what depression is. So depression is a very complex disorder, but for the limited time that we have during this presentation, in a nutshell, it's best explained as a decreased amount of serotonin, decreased serotonin levels in the brain. Serotonin is known as the happy hormone in our body. It makes us feel good. It influences our mood. And there are serotonin transporters in the brain that are responsible for removing serotonin that is released at the synapses in the brain. So a common therapy to address depression is to use what's called SSRIs. These are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, a medication, right? That's often prescribed to treat depression. And what this does is it helps keep more serotonin in the brain by blocking those serotonin transporters. So before I move on, another important nutrition link here that involves something called tryptophan. I'm going to talk about it a bit later, so I just want to introduce it now. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid from which the body uses to produce something called 5-HTP, which is the precursor to serotonin, our happy hormone. So if you are not consuming enough tryptophan from a healthy diet, from things like eggs, chicken, oats, turkey, the chain reaction is not enough tryptophan, not enough 5-HTP, not enough serotonin is being produced to affect and elevate your mood. And one more nutrition connection is that the majority of our serotonin is produced and stored in our guts. Very interesting. So I'm going to talk about gut health in a minute because it really does help influence your mood. You want to make sure your body's producing in your gut enough serotonin, releasing it and storing it, right? So I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so we can go to the next slide here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now the process by which inflammation affects depression involves the amino acid tryptophan. In order for, again, it's very complicated, but hopefully this slide will show it here. In order for tryptophan to be broken down to—
Sorry, Joanne, do you want me to go to all of the progressions of the slide? Because it goes in stages.
Yeah, do you want to, let me see here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, hit the next. Get it again. Okay. Let's keep that. Okay, so let's keep that because I'm going to be talking about IDO. Okay, so hopefully I've got the connection for you. Eating tryptophan from protein foods makes 5-HTP, makes serotonin. Okay, so now I just want to talk about what's the connection here with cytokines. In order for the tryptophan to be broken down to make the 5-HTP and then the serotonin, as I just mentioned, an enzyme, as you can see there, called IDO is needed. IDO breaks down tryptophan, but if too much IDO breaks down too much tryptophan, then there's not enough to make 5-HTP and then make the serotonin. So here's where cytokines and inflammation comes in. If cytokine levels are high, say from a poor diet, lots of processed foods, and you've got systemic inflammation in your body, as we do, people with disabilities, then what it does is it's called upregulating IDO, which means it makes that IDO way too active. And when that IDO is way too active, it's chronically breaking down too much tryptophan. And then there's not enough to make that 5-HTP, not enough to make the serotonin, and then that affects our mood, okay? And another interesting point is with increased inflammation, it actually accelerates the serotonin removal between those synapses in your brain. So you get a double hit by having too much inflammation, systemic inflammation in your body. We can go to the next. I hope this is all making sense here. You might want to actually go back and see this recording because it is a lot to take in, but it's fascinating how it all comes together. So the good news is that certain foods can decrease cytokine levels. Certain foods decrease inflammation in the body and it contributes to less cytokine release, while other ones have the opposite effect. And several years ago, myself and another nutritionist, we did a study with Brock University, who I know Sherry is very familiar with. And we did a study specifically on these cytokines and diet and anti-inflammation. And what we did in this diet is we removed common inflammatory foods like sugar, processed carbohydrates. We introduced natural anti-inflammatory foods, and as well, we introduced certain supplements that have a natural anti-inflammatory effect. And the subjects in this study had their blood taken at the beginning of the study, after 1 month, and then at 3 months. It was a 3-month-long study. And what we were testing for in their blood work at the beginning, 1 month and 3 months, was we were testing for cytokine levels as well as their tryptophan levels. And what's really interesting, as you can see there, is at the end of the 3 months, not only was there a decrease in cytokine levels by 28%, there was an increase of tryptophan by 28%. So there's a greater availability to make the 5-HTP and the serotonin. And what's really interesting is that the impact that this had on depression. So at the end of 3 months, what we found with our subjects is that they were having a decrease overall of 55% in their depression scores after 3 months, which was remarkable to us because that medication I was talking about, SSRIs, that had a decrease of depression scores of only 48 to 54% in 6 months. So we got a higher, more successful positive effect in half the time just by altering their diet. So that was really quite remarkable. If we can please go to the next slide. There's the results there. Okay, and if we can go to the next slide there. Okay, so what were the key anti-inflammatory foods that we used in this study? Okay, so the big ones were omega-3 fatty acids through both diet and supplementation. So diet, things like fish, walnuts, and then where they were taking supplements of it. And the other one was curcumin. So curcumin is a compound, a natural compound found in the spice called turmeric. So again, you can use the spice turmeric in your cooking, which our subjects were doing, but you can also take supplementation of this. They isolate it and put it into supplement form. And so those were the two big things that we used there. So you might want to consider getting more of those foods, consider taking those supplements after you talk to your healthcare provider to have that anti-inflammatory effect. Okay. If we go to the next slide, some other interesting things that we found out is, just for an example here, in a study in 2005, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, it published a study that showed consuming 8 or more daily servings of colorful vegetables after just 4 weeks reduced the concentration of those cytokines that I was talking about and reduced them significantly. And a more recent study last year found the inverse relationship between fruits and vegetable consumption and the development of depression or anxiety. They found that eating 4 extra portions of fruits and vegetables can boost people's mental health. So that was part of our diet as well. We had people consuming at least 1 to 2 fruits a day, 5 or more servings of vegetables every single day. So really, the more fruit and vegetables that you eat, the less likely you are to be diagnosed with mental illness, anxiety, and depression. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. I've talked a lot about inflammation, what it can do to the body. I do want to talk more about your gut here, gut and inflammation, because it also plays a big role in depression. You really want to take care of your gut health overall. So if we can go to the next slide, thank you. There's numerous connections between your brain and your gut. There's nerve connections, there are hormonal connections. And if we can go to the next slide, there's also a gut-brain connection through your bacteria in your bodies. So the bacteria in your bodies is also known as your microbiome. It's known as your gut flora. There's different names for it. But basically what it's talking about is the bacteria in our guts. We need there's about 4 to 5 to 600 different types of bacteria in our guts, and we need them for proper digestive health. We need them for proper bowel health. They weigh about 2 to 3 pounds of our entire body weight there. And it might sound strange having all this bacteria in our guts, but we do need them, and they have a huge influence on your mood. There's trillions of them there. They also play a huge role in your immune system, okay? So if we can please go to the next slide there. Okay, so what does your gut health, your gut flora have to do with mood? So again, studies show that the gut microbiome plays a role in neurological conditions. And a lot of us with disabilities have various neurological conditions, whether it be spinal cord injury, MS, autism, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, as well as depression. So the more good bacteria you have in there, it's just, again, it just protects you from maybe developing these, or actually helps address them to reduce some of the symptoms. And the gut microbiome also plays an important role in the effectiveness of some of the medications we take for these conditions. So there's another influence it has on our overall health. If we go to the next slide there. So the other important thing to take care of your gut health is to get yourself lots of fiber, eat lots of fiber, 1 to 2 servings of fruits, 5 or more servings of vegetables every day. Why do you need to do that? Because dietary fiber supports the growth of those healthy intestinal bacteria that we need for digestive health, bowel health, and immune health. They are critical. We need them in there. And so studies find that the diversity of the gut microbiome is based on the amount of fruits and vegetables in a person's diet. The more variety of fruits and vegetables you eat, the more healthy variety you have of these gut microbes in your system. It also found that the microbial composition of the gut can be rapidly altered with diet, good or bad. So if you're suddenly, you're eating a great diet, suddenly turn to a bad diet, you are completely affecting the microbiome in your guts, and you'll feel it. Your bowel function might not be as good. And the opposite is true too. It's quite remarkable. People who don't eat healthy diets suddenly start eating healthier diets. Their bowel functions better. And that's everything from how many times a day they go to the bathroom to the consistency of their stool. They feel better. They have less bloating. It's amazing the effect that having lots of good bacteria in your gut can have. I'm talking within days or weeks, people start to feel these effects. And the other thing is research has found that good gut bacteria have a marked effect on what's called GABA levels. GABA is a neurotransmitter that's involved with regulating anxiety, digestion, sleep, relaxation, and it can elevate mood. So that's another connection between the bacteria in our guts, our brain health, and our mood. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. So how do you take care of your gut health to make sure you got lots of good bacteria in there to help boost your overall mood? You can eat lots of good healthy foods with good bacteria in them. And these are fermented foods. So foods like sauerkraut, if you like sauerkraut, get it in there as a side dish or on top of your favorite meats. Kombucha is a fermented drink. You can buy it now at most grocery stores, health food stores. It's a bottle this big. You only need like a third of the bottle to get your daily intake of those good bacteria. Kimchi is another fermented food. Miso soup is a great way to get them. You can also get probiotics through probiotic supplements. And I do recommend, I've talked about fruits and vegetables. I do recommend that you get 1 to 2 servings of fruit a day, 5 or more servings of vegetables a day. Try and eat like 1 serving of legumes and lentils a day, even if it's hummus as a dip there. Sorry, my printer has just suddenly started doing a test on itself, if you can hear that in the background. And you want to do whole grains. You always want to have whole grains for carbohydrates versus processed white grains. So people often say, well, I'm eating whole wheat. It's not white. That's good, right? No, it has to be a whole grain. Whole wheat is basically like eating white. There's not enough fiber in there that you want to feed that gut bacteria. Okay, so these are some really good, easy tips for you to increase fiber in your diet and really feed those good bacteria in there. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's some other important nutrients that you can include, just some other options to affect your mood. And if we can go to that, magnesium. Magnesium is one of the biggest deficiencies that people have. So it's one of the most, I don't know why, because it's very easy to get in your diet, but most people are magnesium deficient. And we need magnesium for a host of reasons: heart health, muscle health, nerve health. And what's interesting is food processing, and a lot of people are eating processed foods, decreases magnesium in foods. Things like antacid, Tums, any kind of like heartburn, antacid medications such as diuretics, coffee, caffeine, no more than 2 cups of coffee a day because it decreases magnesium levels in your diet. Stress also affects your magnesium levels, and we talked about people with disabilities having more stress in their life generally. So it does affect your levels. That's one reason, but there's also most people aren't eating enough magnesium-rich foods. And research is showing that over-the-counter magnesium is a safe and effective way to treat mild to moderate depression, and it's comparable to that prescription SSRI that I was talking about earlier. So that's really interesting. Just by taking a supplement, and I'm not recommending if you're on SSRI to stop taking it, but you can talk to your physician about maybe transitioning when you change your diet increase your magnesium levels, because it can have some very positive effects on depression levels. Another study, 126 adults who were experiencing mild to moderate depression. Half the participants received just 248 milligrams of magnesium over 6 weeks. It's actually not a high amount of magnesium. 6 weeks, not a big period of time. And the other half had no magnesium treatment at all. And the results were that 112 participants actually had improvements in their depression and anxiety symptoms. So that was really, really impressive. And in addition, the positive effects appeared very quickly, 6 weeks. It's quite remarkable. So this is why I just wanted to demonstrate the effect that food, diet, supplementation can have on your mood. If we can go to the next slide, please. Vitamin D is another big one. Okay, vitamin D, we're Canadian. We know we do not get enough vitamin D from the sun because we don't get enough sunshine throughout the year. So Canadian research reviewed 14 studies consisting of over 31,000 participants, and they found a very strong correlation between depression and vitamin D deficiency. The lower the vitamin D levels, the greater chance of depression. So vitamin D, it's really easy to pop some vitamin D supplements, and they're really cheap. You can get them at your health food stores or have them ordered in on Amazon. And it's really important too, right now with COVID, more and more studies are being released on how vitamin D, again, the higher levels you have, can help protect you from having an extreme worst case of COVID if you do get it. There's been some remarkable studies out there that show that it really does prevent people from going into the ICU if they do catch COVID. So if you want to search on Google, vitamin D, COVID, you'll find all sorts of great things that have come out in the last year. So protect yourself, protect your immune system, and also boost your mental health. Get your vitamin D supplements in there. Next slide there. Just some reasons why we don't tend to get enough vitamin D in addition to not getting enough sunshine. Part of it also is we cover up. We've been told that sunburns and cancer, absolutely, it is a huge risk, but the unfortunate thing is people are slathering on sunscreen from head to toe. The minute they go out the door, they're not actually getting enough vitamin D. 20 minutes is all you need. And if you can go out in the sun for 20 minutes on exposed skin, your body can make like 10,000 units of vitamin D in those 20 minutes. So go out for 20 minutes, enjoy the sunshine, get your vitamin D in those summer months, then put your sunscreen on. And then all year round, also make sure you're supplementing so that you don't have a dip in the winter. Okay. And if we can go to the next slide, I threw this in there just as a spice for those of you who like to cook saffron. There's been some really great studies with saffron and its therapeutic role in affecting depression and anxiety. So it also has an effect on GABA, that neurotransmitter in your brain that affects anxiety and stress and mood. Saffron, it tends to be more of an expensive spice. It's very colorful, it's beautiful. But if you do like to cook and you want to put a little bit of saffron in any of your favorite dishes, your stews, curries, anything, have it as a tea, you are also really affecting your overall mood. So there's just another option for you. And the last slide here, another study in 2017 demonstrated that a group of people with moderate to severe depression improved their mood and signs of depression by eating a more healthful diet. And this study was the first to prove that diet alone reduced depression symptoms. The dieters followed a specific 3-month study, and they also had some one-on-one nutritional counseling. And they had a really significant reduction in their depression scores. So I just want to give you guys lots of background and lots of reinforcement here that there's really good research out there backing this up and that it really can affect your overall health. So start now. It's still the winter, but like we've said, these effects can be felt early as 6 weeks. So while you're maybe feeling a little low right now, and your mood's not the best because it's winter and it's COVID, it's second round, start eating like this, and very shortly you will start to feel better. And you'll probably also find that your bowel health is better, you'll sleep better, your energy levels are better. So it's a win-win-win all around. So There it is. It was a lot of information, I know, and it's, a lot of kind of technical stuff there, but that background hopefully will give you the big picture of what your diet can do and how it literally does affect at that kind of biochemical level in your body. Okay, there we go.
Wow, geez, I don't know about you guys, but I might have to watch that presentation again.
I know it is a lot, but it's really, when you break it down, it's eat well and you will feel much better. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Joanne. That was a really good presentation. I actually do have a question for you that came in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, that's actually really good. I have the same question. Do fresh vegetables have the same effect as cooked vegetables?
You will lose some nutrient value in cooking. So it's better to say steam, saute versus boil, because you drain a lot of the nutrients out through boiling, because you're really breaking down, like say a vegetable, the cellular wall of that vegetable, and then the nutrients leach out into the water. So try and saute, try and steam. If you like raw vegetables, go for it. I know it's winter. People tend to like more comfort foods, warm foods, so go for those. But yeah, it does change some nutrient levels. But I'd rather you cook them a little bit by sauteing them than not eat them at all. And with the way they kind of flash freeze fruits and vegetables now, it retains a lot of the nutrients. So don't be afraid also of buying frozen fruits and vegetables. You get a lot of nutrients that way too.
So I guess I have a question from earlier, and you talked about some of the impacts on eating. And I think that for people with disabilities, some of those quite regularly ring true, especially when it comes to income and financial support to buy sort of some of these maybe more expensive foods. So I guess in practice, what would be a way to sort of maintain that healthier eating lifestyle without the sort of financial costs that sometimes comes with it? Or is that a myth?
The myth. And again, I've got presentations on this too. Maybe I can do that next time. So when you look at the cost breakdown of fresh fruits and vegetables versus say McDonald's Happy Meal or Burger King meal, what you can make say 2 to 3 meals out of a can of legumes and some fresh fruit and veg versus one of those Happy Meals. So it's a myth. It's like you don't have to get organic fruits and vegetables. I don't buy organic fruits and vegetables. They're expensive. I tend to put any of my money into organic foods, into meats, because I don't want the hormones or anything that's in the meats. If you wash your fruits and vegetables well, then you don't have to buy the organic stuff, which is going to save you a lot of money. And if you go to No Frills, if you go to Bulk Barn, you can get amazing stuff. And like a can of chickpeas, you can pick up for like 99 cents. And a big can at No Frills. Add that with a cucumber and some olive oil, some sea salt. Like honestly, that is a complete meal right there for you. You get protein, you're getting some good vegetables, and you're getting some healthy fats, and you're getting complex carbohydrates, fiber. So yeah, it's amazing when you look at it. It's just people were not taught in school certainly how to eat well and the cost breakdown of it, but you don't have to break the bank to eat well. And when you look at the cost of pop and candies and all that kind of stuff compared to, again, some baby carrots and some hummus, you can buy stuff really cheaply and you're having a really healthy snack versus eating something that's just laden with sugar and artificial flavors and colors.
I know that Sherry and I have been doing some work, and we have a series of workshops coming up in the spring/early summer about food choices and sort of what are some options out there, and how to mobilize eating healthy, and something that's really sort of been popular now is these sort of delivered meals, right, where you cook and they provide fresh ingredients. And I know that for example, and we're going to do more sort of breakdown of this at a future series, but I mean the reality is, for the price, because people look at that and say, well, that's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money to buy for these meals. And yeah, sure, it's a little expensive, but when you think about, a lot of people now are resorting to like skip the dishes, right? So getting a combo from McDonald's through Skip, you're looking at $15-20, and that's just a really crappy meal.
Yeah.
Whereas for the same price, you're getting enough ingredients probably to make yourself even more than one meal. And
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You get good sized meals of those. Like Chef's Plates is a good one. It's a good delivery, I find, in terms of cost and healthy food and stuff that tastes good. That's a good delivery. There's a couple that are out there that are very cost effective, but Chef's Plate's one that I would recommend because
yeah,
that's
thank you.
yeah. But no, you tend to get like 2 meals out of what they send you, and it's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's we have another question here. It says, there is, all right, I'm not too sure what this means. There is the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list put out every year by the EWG. So I'm not sure if you know what that means.
No, not familiar. No.
So I don't know if that person wants to verbalize what they're thinking or if they want to send me more details, but we're not sure what that means.
I had a question, Joe. So when you look at those numbers, like I eat pretty healthily, but when you look at like eat 5 servings of vegetables and this much fruit and this much, it seems like overwhelming. And you're like, and you talk about the ease of eating and like that's what people are going to reach for. Do you have any tips or tricks on like how to make it healthy stuff we're reaching for when we're like hungry? Like, is there anything that you could think of maybe pre-prepping or whatever? What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you make it easier to make those healthier choices?
Yeah, it's not like it does sound like a lot. I totally hear you. Like 1 to 2 servings of fruit. Like 1 serving is like an apple, an orange, or 1 cup of berries. That's easy peasy, right? Take an apple, take a pear, cup of berries, good to go. It's the vegetables that throws people. 5 servings. A serving is like a half cup. So in your mind, just think of it like if you were to take 3 handfuls of baby spinach, there's like 3 servings of veg right there. If you had that for lunch with a piece of chicken or a can of tuna on top, there's 3 right there. For dinner, you have like 2 more half cup servings of broccoli, cauliflower. That's it. Like minimum 5 servings. If you want to have more, great. But I think it's people understanding what a serving is. So it's not as much as you think it is. And when you actually visualize it, I'm a very visual person, it's not as scary. And yeah, the prep thing, like baby carrots are easy, right? Buy a bag of baby carrots. Those are just easy to sit and crunch. It's the crunchy thing that gets people for snacking psychologically. And I find working with clients, if I can replace the crunch with celery, again, just wash it, snap it off. It's easy, crunch, eat it, dip it in some almond butter. Just keep it simple. Like I'm not preparing fancy hors d'oeuvres and appetizer plates every day for myself to snack on. Like I usually open my fridge and eat at my fridge what's there for a snack, and it will be something really simple like what I've just said. So keep it simple to stuff that you can physically handle. So it's snapping off some celery or taking some baby carrots, and always have some like a dip on hand, like a hummus, and that you can just like have that and it's satisfying. And when you've got lots of fiber in your food, you get filled up faster, you tend to eat less. So yeah, it's just keep it simple, but keep it to things you like as well.
So I have a bit more details from this person. It says that the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 has to do with produce that is recommended to avoid unless organic, and the reasons why. For example, strawberries with 20 different pesticides, but they also show 15 clean non-organic foods that are safe to eat. So I guess that's what that list is published.
Okay, so yeah, there's definitely, I mean, certain fruits, certain vegetables absorb pesticides just by the nature of how they grow and the vegetable and fruits, like the outside texture. So things like strawberries will absorb more pesticides. So, but again, if you really want to go the organic route, then you can buy those fruits and vegetables. But again, if you wash your stuff really, really well, let it soak in some water for 15, 20 minutes, you'll get rid of a lot of those pesticides. Like the average apple, by the time it gets to your home, you buy it, it's been sprayed about 17 times with pesticides. So wash it really well and get rid of them off the surface of that. So I don't want to say everybody you have to eat organic and avoid these and eat these. I just say wash your stuff really, really well, and you'll save yourself a lot of money. Yeah. So just when you come home, dump your stuff in a sink full of water and get rid of those pesticides.
So I just got a follow-up to your serving size. Just wondering, does serving size, I guess, is it relative on body size? So the reason I ask is I'm not a very big guy. I don't eat a lot of food. So for me to imagine eating 5 servings of really anything over the course of a day would be too much. So does sort of body size, can that play a role?
It will play a role in your overall foundation of how many calories you need per day. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, 1 to 2 pieces of fruit. So again, 1 apple, 1 pear, that's all you need during the day. Veg, yeah, again, if you break it down to the half cup serving size, I said, when it comes to, body size, it's more protein that people need to watch how much protein intake you're taking. So I always say you have a built-in protein meter, which is your hand, without your thumb, without your fingers. That's how much each individual person needs, 3 palm size a day of protein. So that's like 2 eggs, piece of fish, piece of chicken. That's your built-in protein meter. When it comes to foods like carbohydrates, that's when you need to adjust according to individuals, how old you are, how your weight is. But I think I could probably get you there, those 5 servings of veg. It will be a challenge for me.
All right, I got another one here. So it says, do you have any tips for someone? So this sounds more like just a general question. Do you have any tips for someone who doesn't eat as healthy as they should to eat healthier?
Drink them. I don't know why, everybody has individual reasons why they don't eat their fruits and vegetables. It could be because they don't like them. They don't like the texture. They don't like the taste. It's too much work. Shove them all in a blender, put 3 handfuls of baby spinach, throw a cup of berries in there. That's a ton of the fruit and veg servings I've already said. Blend it in a blender, drink it. Add some water to it. Get them in you by drinking them. I'm a huge, huge advocate for drinking your calories, especially within the disabled community, because we tend to have digestive issues. It's issues with, prepping, chopping, cooking. So drink them. Magic Bullets are really great blenders. They're cheap. Canadian Tire has them on sale all the time for $79.99. And they're easy to use, easy to clean. Blend them up, good to go.
What about drink supplements? I mean, obviously you see commercials all the time, like Ensure and all those ones.
I do not advocate for any of those Ensures or Boosts. They tend to have a lot of artificial flavors, artificial colors. They have unhealthy fats in them. They're sitting in those containers, in crates, in a warehouse for how many months on end. They might sit in the store shelf. They're not fresh. You want to make your own. And that's what I was saying, blend them, put your own protein powder in there if you want, with the fruit, with the spinach, drink it down. It's so much healthier. So much healthier.
Well, it sounds delicious.
Wrap up on this note. Sorry, I have another presentation at 3:00. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, not at all. Thank you so much, Joanne.
Today.
You'll be back for this in a month. So and this video will be on YouTube, and I'll send out the link next week for anyone who wants to watch it.